we've made it to the beautiful Wheeler Island, part of the family group, only a couple of kilometres off Mission Beach.
It's unbelievable how close it is to the mainland, yet you could be anywhere in the world. You know, the turtles poking their heads up, the rainforest coming down to the fringing reef, the eagles that welcome us on entry. Mate, it's magic.
Let's call it ours for the day, mate.
Beauty. Incredible what you'll find washed up on the beach. That's the taste of summer, isn't it?
Fellow councillors, staff and residents viewing via live stream. Good morning all and welcome. I acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of the land on which this meeting is being held. Pay my respect to the elders, past, present and emerging. We have apologies from Mr. Sadler, Mr. Singh, Mr. Goodman and Mr. Crosby. Are there any other apologies? If not, I'll move into the declaration of conflict. Declaration of prescribed conflict of interest or declarable conflict of interest. Please use this opportunity to make public any prescribed conflict of interest or declarable conflict of interest in respect of the items in the agenda. Councillors should use this opportunity to disclose and or comment on other councillors and or staff interests in accordance with the Act and the regulations. Are there any conflicts to declare? Councillor Barnes.
Good, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a conflict of interest in 3.4 because I've requested to leave the region for 4 days in June, July.
Thank you, that's noted. No further conflicts. Take that as a no. We move on to item 1, confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of May 2021. Somebody moved their true and accurate record. Moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Tui. All in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you. Move on to item 2, any business arising. Councillor Barnes.
Good, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just got a question for the CEO in point 5. Dredging of Port Hinchinbrook, CEO. Could you just bring us up to date with the latest in the 6.5 issue?
Mr. Chairman, Council was required to a business case in place, submission to federal government, which happened quite some time ago. I don't recall the precise date, I'm afraid. That business case has been to the federal government. Federal government's come to Council on several occasions seeking additional information which has been supplied, and one of the issues that's arisen in the business case is possibility of Council taking over the dredging maintenance of the area for 5 years after the initial project is completed. I've written some time ago to the Deputy Prime Minister suggesting that to do so would in conflict with the quadripartite conformed deed. That possibility sufficient.
Councillor.
Yeah, could you just clarify that we actually don't have or have not been given any tech dredging?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, again, thank you, Councillor Mill, for the question, and it's, in my view, an excellent question. No monies have been provided to Council whatsoever. Council was provided with a letter in the previous term suggesting that if Council cared to go through the necessary procedure, then 1.5 million was available. Don't have our expenditure figure front of mind at the moment. Obviously, council has already committed its own funds to the investigation process and some engineering and design aspect of dredging solution might be suitable for recommendation to council.
Move on to governance, item 3, page 48, delegations, Chief Executive, and Mr. Kerr will present this report.
Great game. You're trying to get me in trouble. Delegations. So as per the Local Government Act, Section 257, Council is required to take an annual review of delegations from Council to the Chief Executive Officer. Some points to note is that local governments cannot delegate a power that is required to be exercised by resolution under Act. And I have the full list of matters that cannot be delegated to the CEO. A local government can choose to exercise a power themselves even after a power has been delegated. Once a power is delegated, the delegate has the authority to use the power and does not need to seek further approval or endorsement. And when a local government delegates its powers to the CEO, the local government must review those delegations annually, which is brought in front of you today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Vanessa, I've got a real problem with this issue actually. And I'd like to see a workshop on this and probably lie on the table until we have that workshop. Now we reviewed this last June, I think. Counted up 225 delegations to go and officers in it today. So, me personally, I need more time to get across this. I'd like to hear Jeff Haynes' opinion on my report on this. I'm really afraid that this gives extra power to the officers and the CEO. I, for one, am not happy to give decisions away. I think councillors we need to keep a lot of the decision making to councillors. That's why we're here. We've got a new CEO starting in time, which I'd just like to see his opinion of this. Jeffrey, you got something to say on that?
Councillor Barnes, this is a document we've had in place a lot of the time. I think the things that are highlighted are only how changing policies may have affected some of the delegation powers. These delegation powers are mainly based around local laws, around Planning Act. They're not generally sort of decisions that come to a council. I don't know if you'd like your imprimatur upon us declaring a dangerous dog as a dangerous dog. I personally believe, I don't see any issues with this at all. I would suggest, and correct, I'm sure the CEO will pull me up, I think this needs to be put into place and we can still do some more work upon it, and it can be reviewed at any time. Would it not, Mr. CEO?
So the majority of our operations, high level things such as, a deputy mayor, anything like that, operational in line with legislation and
Strategic nations there operate, can't get in. On that basis, I believe that the vote should be put. Would somebody move the officer's recommendation? by Councillor Millwood, seconded by Baines. All in favour? Carried by 5, and Councillor Barnes is voting against. Okay, thanks, Ms. Kerr.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might make a comment. Ms. Kerr, there has always been under the legislation a number of decisions which council alone can make by resolution, which may not be or ought be delegated. Let's call it the Belcara legislation, has come in and double entrenched a number of those decisions. Also, there's two heads of power why certain delegations can never be made. An easy example is the organisational structure or the appointment of a CEO, those sorts of things. So clearly only council can do by resolution.
Thanks, Mr. Councillor.
I think it's something we need to do. And governance, right? I would love to spend today with us going through these 147 pages and 800 odd delegations, so that the council gets a good idea of it. And I would suggest probably an appropriate time is when we go into the new induction process after a soon to be announced by-election.
Councillor Millwood.
Go back.
Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yeah, I do appreciate that last comment. I think it's true. I just thought if we had a workshop before we put this to bed, we may be able to air some of the points that the previous speaker said, like saying that we can change it at any time, or what points. If we would have gone through a bit of an education session, we could have picked up a few along the way. That's all I thought. Thank you.
Well, with that in mind, we'll have a new councillor representing Division 6 shortly, and I will ask the CEO to make sure that workshop does take place to bring the new councillor into the fold. There's going to be a lot of training for the new councillor required as well, and we're all going to join in and do a refresher course so that person's not isolated. So there's going to be a bit of bonding going forward, Councillor Barnes, and that should keep your issue well on the table. All right, we move on to item 3.2, page 195, the operational plan, and Ms. Slattery will present this report. Morning.
Good morning, Ms. Slater.
Good morning. So at our last council meeting, the council adopted the new corporate plan, so for the 2021 to 2025 time period. Today we have on the table is the first operational plan to support that new corporate plan. So under the legislation, we must adopt an annual operational plan, and it highlights the individual activities and responsibilities for the nominated activities council wishes to achieve for the next financial year. The operational plan is attached to the report. So the 5 key goals that was adopted in the corporate plan at the last meeting was community, economy, region, organisation and infrastructure. So we've got a number of key initiatives to support each of those 5 key goals. So under community, our people, we've got 8 initiatives to achieve for the next financial year. Under economy, we've got 4. Under the region, our natural environment, we have 6. Organisation, our team, we have 7 initiatives. Under infrastructure, our built environment, we have 5 key initiatives. Next operational. And so the recommendation is that council adopt the annual operational plan for 21-22.
Thank you, Ms. Slattery. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Chair. Probably more a comment than anything else. There was a lot of conversation around our corporate plan and how high level it was. The operational plan is sitting under that, and I believe community thought that it would be a much broader document with being more specific in other ways around their own particular communities, especially. But I think our opportunity in that space And I know we've discussed this before, and a community plan used to be a statutory piece, is no longer a statutory piece. But I understand we're going to move a community plan engagement with the broader community as a voluntary piece going into the future.
I'd just like to speak to the 5 pillars provided by Ms. Slattery. The first one is community, our people, and there's an action listed there. Number 1, community survey will be conducted in the second quarter here. The next one is economy, our future, and the commencement of the review of the Cassowary Coast planning scheme, including development incentives, is listed over the whole of the year. We move on to infrastructure, our built environment. Item 13, implementation of round 1 and 2 of asset rationalisation reports. As we heard recently, our staff are currently compiling a report that will list buildings identified for removal from our asset register, giving us savings on depreciation and insurance going forward. Item 4, region, our natural environment. And item 20, probably our biggest strategic decision in the 13 months in office, the transition waste transfer services from the contractor to in-house delivery. That happens on August 1, and work is well progressed in this area. 24 new positions have been identified. Most of those interviews have now taken place, and a number of people have been identified and notified that they will be working in that space after August 1. And organisation, our team. Item 25, adoption of balanced budgets. Our Chief Financial Officer and his team done a great job and continue to deliver balanced budgets. Further to that, this year saw 13 years continuous unmodified audits. So the broader spectrum of financial management is recognised by our auditors, and we've received 13 unmodified audit in the history of Cassowary Coast since 2008. So I just want to compliment Slattery on the report. Some key strategies in each one of those pillars, and it's going to be an exciting 12 months ahead in terms of our new direction and our new brand of One Coast, Cassowary Coast. Thank you. All right, with those few words, are there any, Councillor Millwood?
Yes, through the chair. I'd also like to commend Kelly and the team for this wonderful document, and there is opportunity if people want to delve right into the nitty gritty. They can go on the website, and all the information that they need is actually there for them to read if they want to read it.
Oh,
is that right?
Yes, the operational plan, once adopted, will be uploaded to our website.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. Mostly I want to applaud the work done by Ms. Slattery and the executive management producing an operational plan which is somewhat different from the previous iterations. It's considerably more useful for council's purposes in terms of monitoring and keeping abreast of council's delivery of its budget over the 12-month period.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Any further comments? Would somebody move that council adopt the annual operational plan for 21-22? Moved by Councillor Pervin, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Slattery. Move on to item 3.3, page 210, the financial report, and Ms. Bradley will present this report. Morning, Ms. Bradley.
Good morning, Ms. Bradley.
So this morning I have in front of you our finance report and our monthly council reporting package for the period ending 28th of May. So this report was run a bit before the end of the month in order to get it to this council meeting. So within these reports, our RB3 budget review was adopted by council on the 27th of May, and that is what's reflected in these financial reports. So the report provides information to councillors on our year-to-date revenue expenditure across our departments, programs and services, and it also includes some financial statistical information that highlights our operations and where we're currently sitting. So some of the key highlights for the month: operating revenue is currently sitting at 90.96 million, which is 28,000 over budget in comparison to the year-to-date budget of 90.93. Operating expenditure is currently sitting at 86.2 million, which is 1.2 million behind budget, with the budget figure of 87.4 million. The end of month cash balance was sitting at 44.7 million, and capital expenditure for the month totaled 2.8 million, which is in line with where we generally are, with year-to-date capital expenditure including commitments totaling 41.2 million, which is 67% of our capital budget expended excluding commitments, or 83% of our capital budget expended including commitments. So the operating result, where we're currently sitting at 28th of May, sitting at a surplus of 4.78 million versus the budget of 3.5 million, so we're 1.26 ahead of budget. Our financial sustainability measures are noted in the table below, with operating surplus sitting at 5.26%, which is in line with the targeted range. Asset sustainability ratio currently sitting at 91%, also within the targeted range. And net financial liabilities ratio sitting at minus 23%, also within the targeted range. Our summary of financial results is detailed on the table on the third page. So the key items to note here relate to our fees and charges, which are currently tracking over budget by around 170,000 due to increased rate searches, building applications and inspection fees, trade waste and camping fees, offset by reduced landing fees at our aerodromes and development applications. So interest, as we've been talking about all year, still tracking under budget by 300,000 due to lower than expected interest rates throughout the year. Operating grants is currently tracking 468,000 over budget due to early receipt of our Works for Queensland COVID funding and the receipt of the second payment of the Coastal Adaptation Strategic Plan. The next item to note is our other revenue sources, currently tracking 200,000 over budget due to COVID JobKeeper rebates that Council's been able to pick up for our apprentices and trainees, as well as caravan park rates reimbursements coming into that. Employee expenditure at the end of the month was sitting at 1.9 million behind budget due to vacant positions, as well as the timing of when payroll posting happened throughout the month. Materials and services currently tracking 547,000 under budget, relating to timing of invoices from some of our contractors, reduced marketing costs and fuel costs, offset by some increased plant hire, as well as emergent works. It's included in that. So the forecast figures in this table have been updated to reflect those. Finance costs currently tracking 300,000 over budget. So this is due to our doubtful debt provision, as well as winding back of discount rates for our refuse restoration provision have gone through there. Depreciation currently tracking 865,000 over budget, also what we've discussed previously, predominantly relating to water, intangible assets, sewage and plant and equipment. Capital grants under budget due to DRFA funding haven't been received yet, and our gain on asset disposal relates to the sale of our fleet items, offset by the loss on disposal due to our capital works program and the capitalisation process. Investment performance for the end of the month, with the 44.7 million cash we had on hand, we were getting an average interest rate of around 0.58%. With majority of our funds, as you can see in that table, being directed to where we can generate the best interest rate. Capital projects, so our capital budget including carryovers currently totals 49.5 million and year-to-date expenditure at 33 million, with year-to-date commitments sitting just above 8 million. So our budget risks that we've identified throughout the year, so firstly we've got our Port Hinchinbrook sewage treatment plant. Then we've got our depreciation, which we've mentioned and also factored into that forecast. Interest on investments, Victory Creek Bridge arbitration and our NDRRA works for 3 events due to the timing of the revenue. So the forecast in the table here, currently sitting at an operating deficit of 326,000 anticipated for the end of the year. That is expected to increase slightly due to some change in our refuse restoration provision from some work we've done around that and discussions we've had with our audit committee also. So we're expecting our forecast to end around 700,000 deficit stage. Going to take any question.
Thank you, Ms Bradley. Any questions for Ms Bradley? Just want to make a comment around the Port Inchbrook sewage related expenditure on page 213. Council has adopted a resolution to cease involvement in that plant at the end of this month, and currently I believe we're subsidising that private asset around 130,000. Correct? Has that changed at all?
Year to date, we're seeing it around 130,000. We had budgeted revenue around 180,000 throughout the full year, which at this stage we're not expecting to receive. So that's effectively the budget risk that we've highlighted there.
Thanks, Ms Bradley. Any further questions? If not, would somebody move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor Baines. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Great work. Thanks, Lee.
We move on to item 3.4, page 225, request for leave of absence, and hand over to the CEO to present this report. Councillor Barnes, leave the room. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Barnes will be absent from the region between the 29th of June and the 2nd of July inclusive. He's requested that Council approve leave of absence for that period, and it's my recommendation that Council resolves so to do.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Any questions? Somebody move the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor Baines. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to general business. Oh, Mr. CEO. Oh, you better get him. Yeah, he's here. Right there. Okay, any general business, Councillor? Councillor Chewy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a few little pieces. I was challenged, this is for the CEO, please. I was challenged recently that our meetings, unlike other councils, are not open to the public, and I assured my person on the phone that we were. Could you just explain the process if we do want people to, if people are wanting to come to sit in at the meeting, if you could just explain the process of how they go about it, please, Mr. CEO.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Chewy. The council meetings are indeed open to the public again. However, given COVID-19 restrictions as to numbers of people within the room and physical distancing, we've calculated that under normal circumstances, perhaps only 4 people, it's slightly variable, but in the order of 4 people could attend. To control that, the process that we've installed is that someone is required, who wants to attend a meeting, is required to contact Ms. Sands, the executive, am I wrong, Ms. Sands? The executive assistant to the CEO, 48 hours before the meeting, from the top of my head. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would like to rely upon Ms. Sands, if I may. Is it 2 days before? Yes, and that application is available through Council's website.
Councillor Millwood.
Just further to that, through the chair, could you just please explain what the community involvement is when they come to a public meeting?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, members of the public are entitled to sit in the gallery and observe.
Councillor Chewy.
Thank you for that. We've touched on, obviously we're having a by-election coming up for the Division 6 space. Could you explain the process? People are asking me nominations, dates, just any information that might be able to provide some clarity, please. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the notice calling for nominations for candidates for Division 6 will be published on the 18th of June. Nominations will close on the 29th of June. There'll be a pre-polling period of 7 days before the pre-polling period of 7 days before the by-election to be held on the 17th of July. And our estimate at this time is that the cost to council, which will now need to be installed within our budget, the cost to council will be in the order of $48,000. Through you, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank and compliment the Electoral Commission of Queensland, which was working on this as quickly as council staff were working on it as soon as the resignation came through. The ECQ, the Electoral Commission of Queensland, started working on this and has been liaising with council staff in an attempt to reduce costs as much as possible. And I think they've done an exemplary job, and it's been a good experience for council officers to liaise with the Commission to provide for the best possible outcome for in terms of council's budget and in terms of the speed with which this matter will be able to be dealt with.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Just following up, the meeting on Tuesday night at Mission Beach, MBCA meeting, was a very informative meeting. I just want to touch on a few things that were brought up there. The people from QPWS were there to talk about the crocodile situation. It was a really interesting talk, but the thing that I felt came across to me was if people do see a crocodile, they just asked if it could be reported, rather than perhaps posting it on Facebook or telling their friends or their neighbours. Do that as well, but ring, and I have the number here, it's 1300 130 372. It's really important that those details are logged, because the team do go out and check on the information that they're given. So, people are upset about the crocodiles, and we understand that, but if the authorities aren't aware of where they are, then it's a pointless exercise. So I really encourage people to ring up. Councillor Baines will assist me with the app as well. Thank you. But it's really, really important to let the authorities know where these are. I'll just keep going and then come back to you, Councillor Baines, if that's okay. The other interesting talk were people from Wetmar. Were talking about crazy ants and the damage that they pose to us in our tropical area where we live. There are some in Cairns and in Townsville, so once again, be vigilant. The gentleman talked about if grandma's coming, you're bringing a plant to grandma from Cairns and you're bringing a pot plant down to Mission Beach, there could be crazy ants in that pot plant. So it's just really important, and it's really, really, really important to keep an eye on, because they can be a very, very literally toxic thing to have into our area. So it was a really, really informative talk, and perhaps one that we could have ourselves here again for us. And the other good piece of news that the LMAC group have worked really hard to provide tackle bins on various places, jetties and ports around the area. They're only small, there's only a very small space, so people can't put rubbish as tins and cans and lunch boxes and things in there. Their purpose is for fishing line, tackle and clean bait bags. So they will then be emptied and monitored to see what's in them. But once again, it's just a great piece for the environment, and Councillor Baines might touch more on that as well. But it was a really interesting meeting and very informative. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. Any Councillor
Baines. And with your indulgence, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Chewy. So some other really important points. The Crockwise phone number, it's a great phone number. Historically, it was not managed well, but there are officers specifically that answer the lines, put in electronic reports that are always followed up. I don't think it's just about a crocodile. Cassowaries are very prevalent in our region. We had one in the Innisfail Post Office on Saturday morning. So you can ring them up and they will also take all that information down. But there is a new app that has been specifically developed for crocodiles initially, and it's called the Q Wildlife app. So if anyone and everyone who's listening downloads the app on their phone, if you see a crocodile, and even if you're not in service, you can take a photo of the crocodile. It GPS locates its GPS located date, time, and that goes directly to DES, the Department of Environment and Science, and they use that to help track, help identify. There's a belief that the department does nothing with crocodiles, and that's the furthest from the truth that can be told. They are really concerned, especially with crocodiles within our more populated regions. And I think you might be right, Councillor Chewy, people take a photo, whack it up on Facebook, which they monitor as well. But if you take a little bit of responsibility yourselves, and let's all give them a hand, and it's citizen science at the same time. That's a live tracked, and residents can actually track crocodile sightings, etc., themselves through this app. So the maps are all live, and they update very, very regularly.
Councillor Bain.
And the tackle bins and and we're also doing cigarette butt containers. And adding further to that, these are being installed by the LMAC, which is in partnership with Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, but local people and local organisations are volunteering to maintain them on the LMAC's behalf. So it's not an impost or a cost. It's coming back to the local government. But I would, again, encourage people not to try and squeeze an old banana in there or something like that. You know, be responsible. It's for fishing line, fishing hooks, and anyone with their butts, they can put their butts in a separate container. But it's a great partnership, and we're also working in that space with Parlay, who are going to collect all the data, and then that goes into point source reduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes.
Good, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question's to the CEO. I know one of our greatest assets in our region is Dunk Island, and we've had a lot of false starts, and councils previously have had a lot to do with the leasing of the spit. Where are we standing currently? Because I know this council's got a great appetite to push that along as much as we can. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Barnes. Through you, Mr. Chairman. The spit at the moment is being operated and maintained under a management agreement. As council has determined previously, council officers at the moment are working on an information piece and a report, which I expect will be with council very shortly for consideration.
CEO, are you happy with that, Councillor?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. While I've got one more question also for the CEO. We've been very successful as a council selling a handful of blocks in P Street in Tully. Now it's time to move away from council because real estate agents have flagged that that they've got buyers that they would like to purchase those blocks. Where are we standing there?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, the various properties for sale, the council officers have been in contact with real estate agents, and I expect we'll be proceeding to see more sales of those surplus allotments very shortly.
All right, good, thank you. We got a new business in our region, and I would like councillors to support this gentleman coming, having a good chat to explain his new business. He's got an invention to recycle and remove, of course, all the banana string, banana bags, and all our chemical drums, which over the years has been a problem. And that's just talk about it another day. I'll be dealing with the CEO on that one. And also, I must compliment our health department on the manufacturing in-house, of course, and also the design of these bigger bins around our region. But only yesterday I saw a fault in that the one in Bryant Street. Our health department is not giving the local businesses enough input to where these are where these bins are being placed. Just because there was a bin there and there was a cafe there, well, that cafe's long gone now. It's up the street and we're still putting the bin there. Yesterday, what happened? The big bin outside the opposite Vinnie's got completely filled up with beautiful clothes and dresses. They thought it was the drop-off point. So panic stations. So I just like to tell our officers and ask our officers, please deal with the locals. Please ask them what their thoughts are where these bins should be placed. It was all panic. We had to get the bin opened, had to get them out, and in the meantime, some had been spoiled, so I don't have to say any more. So I just like the health department to take that on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes.
Yeah, if I may, through you, Mr. Chairman, from memory, we're certainly doing a councillor information session on that very shortly, and I think it might be the next CIS. I thought Councillor Chu was going to help me with the agenda for the next CIS. Very shortly, we will be doing a CIS on it. Yeah.
Any further general business? Councillor Pervin.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just to give a rundown, I've been asking a few questions about the wayfinding strategy. Yesterday, I received some communication from council staff. The wayfinding signs have actually left Victoria. They should be here on Monday. From there, it's a matter of, I guess, installation, which could take some time, but I've circulated through to the councillors this morning photo of the wayfinding signs all on the back of the truck. So I'd just like to thank the staff for hurrying this up and getting the production of these up and going, and looking forward to them finally being installed.
Thank you, Councillor Pervin. That is good news. Councillor Millwood.
Yes, through the chair, I'd just like to remind everyone also that September 1st brings the first day of single-use plastic ban. And on that note, there is a information session and a forum that's going to be held in Innisfail at the Disaster Centre at 5:30 on the 14th of July for anybody that wishes to have further information on how to implement, and anybody can participate. July.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Councillor Barnes.
I've got the floor today. Just lastly, I've had if I've had a complaint from one, I've had a complaint from 100 people, and I have flagged it to the Transport Department through customer request, but I'd now like our officers to take it on board. The entrance signs from both sides of all our towns in the region in a disgraceful manner of mildew, and it's not a good look. Just study it as you're driving along the highway. TMR should be, if it was a council job, we'd have it done, but of course we can't be doing it. It's a TMR job. Please clean the signs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Any further general business? Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With your indulgence, I'll try not to be gracious as Councillor Barnes today, but I just wanted to give you a report, Mr. Mayor, on the Land Forces Conference that I attended on your behalf down in Brisbane last week. It was a fantastic conference. There, I would suggest there was 12 to 1,300 representatives, invited guests. We had the 7 major prime defence companies of the world represented. Queensland Government, the Northern Territory Government, the South Australian Government. It was a really excellent event. The basis of this is all around bringing sovereign capability back to Australia. Australia producing the things that we found we lost in our supply chain when COVID fell upon us. So the Australian Government's white paper that came out last year is a $200 billion investment into our own sovereign capability over the next 10 years. I think, Mr. Mayor and councillors, that it gives Cassowary Coast unique opportunity at the moment, because we have both a geographical and a historical usage that can lend itself to trying to encourage our local businesses, to become partners with some of these other businesses around the world. And also we have a lot of land available. So geographically, we're in a perfect position. Logistically, we're a hub. Got major bases to the south and the north of us. We have one of the safest deep sea ports on the east coast. Our rail line, and at the #1 highway in Australia, runs right through the middle, and we have the connection directly to the west of Queensland, which also runs up into the Gulf country, straight to the Northern Territory, straight over to Western Australia. So in that sense, with the geographical location, we have a great advantage, and I think we need to be getting the message out that for a small region, we are perfectly placed. We can assist this logistical space. Historically, now Defence loves acronyms, so it's the JTTRE. So since the 1940s, the Inalinga, or the Cowley Beach Defence Facility, and the Tully Jungle Training Centre have been the joint tropical trials and research establishments, premier in the Southern Hemisphere, based in Cassowary Coast since the 1940s. Not like their greenfield sites, we've got the historical usage. I can say that, and Mr Mayor, I believe it's common knowledge, Talisman Sabre, the major operation is coming up this way, I believe, in the next few weeks, and that's joint operations with America, I believe the Japanese and Australian forces. There was a lot of protesters out front of this thing over the 3 days, and I just wanted to highlight it's not all about war. This isn't about warmongering. So I wanted to highlight a couple of the fantastic new technologies that I got to see at this conference, and they've been released. So the best new innovative technology in Australia, the award went to a company, and I'm not going to mention the company's name, but they've developed, and you may appreciate this, Councillor Millwood, a 95 kilo X-ray machine. It's a cold cathode technology. It's originally a Japanese technology. This company's bought the ownership of that technology because the Japanese could not make it work. Took an Australian company, took them 18 months to develop, design, and put this piece of work together, and now we own the rights. It's our own sovereign capability with this company in Australia. It'll be an X-ray piece that will take over X-ray technology in the world. It's an amazing piece of work. An offshoot of that now is they've developed an X-ray camera, and the owner of the company described it as, because he spoke to the Defence Force hierarchy and said, "What do you want?" And they said, "We want X-ray vision." And so they've developed an X-ray camera that the Defence Force now can use. They walk it up, it's remote, takes a photograph, sends it back, so you don't have bomb disposal guys in all their gear having to walk up to these things. But there's applications for that in the future with a lot of our facilities. A lot of our infrastructure, Mr Mayor, sits under the ground. They're starting now to work in towards ground penetrating Superman vision, so that our crews will be able to walk around and see the state of our infrastructure without having to dig it up or without having to wait for it to explode, cause us a mess. Another piece of tech for Councillor Millwood was the green eco technology. This is a wet waste treatment that takes 80% of the water out of the wet waste and turns it into something that can be either used as additives into fertilisers, etc., or it's the perfect opportunity to take 80% out of the wet waste, and I'm talking all wet waste, including our sewage treatment plants. You take the 80% of the moisture out, and then that becomes a suitable product to go into the co-generated energy facilities that I know Tully Mill has already started in that space, and I know South Johnson are discussing it. So I've given the details over to Councillor Millwood on that. One for Councillor Chewy. Live biochips for working dogs. So not just war dogs or bomb dogs, cadaver dogs used in our civil defence. The greatest risk to these animals, because they'll do anything for us and they'll do it till they drop. And it's a bit Star Wars or that sort of stuff, I suppose, because it's a chip that you already put in our dogs' necks, so we know who owns them and are they registered. This chip also gives live feed of temperature, heart rates, stress rates, gives a live feed back to not just Army, but also Civil Defence. Back to Civil Defence, Mr Mayor, there was a full Civil Defence Day. The technology is available there. And I will say they praised the local LDMG for the great works we do in this region, and they spoke about the Cassowary Coast stuff, but some of the new technologies coming forward is just incredible. And of course, there's now a civil defence partnership with the Australian Defence Force. They've all been trained, a vast majority of them are being trained into emergency response work, so that when there are large disasters, the ADF may be deployed and they're properly trained and they've done all the work with our local disaster management groups. One last comment I'd like to make also is the large push within the primes. Now, these are international companies. I won't name one outright, but this company spent $100 million. $200 million with Australian companies last year in 2020. Our production, our sovereign right comes to us. It's not taxpayers investing in this. This is multinational money coming in. So $200 million worth of business to Australian companies, and they spent $10.8 million last year with Indigenous companies within our countries. 5% last year. They're targeting to increase to at least double it in the next 12 to 24 months. I believe they're working towards trying to double it again. For all the people who think, I think the accusations were blood on our hands, the amount of technology and work that's getting done in this country that's going towards not production of destruction, there's production of great technologies, supporting Australian companies and bringing that money back to Australia where it ought to be spent. And Mr Mayor, Cassowary Coast is perfectly placed to be part of that. That's enough out of me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. Any further general business? I've got a couple of items here. I just want to go back to Councillor Chewy's original question about the by-election. Right, there's a lot of interest, and just ask, can you clarify the following points? Nominations will open on the 18th of June.
I believe it was the, through you, Mr Chairman, I believe it was the 17th.
17th of June?
I'll just go and recover my note.
Okay.
So nominations, the 18th of June, that'll close on the 29th of June. There'll be pre-polling for 1 week through to polling day on the 17th of July, and the estimate of expenditure for council is $48,000.
Yeah, well, further to that, can you clarify also that you're in the planning stage to make the foyer at the Shire office the polling booth?
Through you, Mr Chairman, yeah, we're still discussing with ECQ how we can best accommodate the returning officer using council facilities.
Yep.
And using council facilities for pre-polling, which reduces that cost for council and therefore for our ratepayers.
And the presiding officer will be located in Three?
Quite likely, Mr Chairman, but that hasn't been agreed.
Still in the planning.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are asking these questions already, and good that we're doing live stream and through Councillor Chewy's question, getting that out there.
Yeah, through you, Mr Chairman, the returning officer has been appointed. I can't release her name yet. She's from Cairns.
Okay. And the last point is the Electoral Commission have done a great job in terms of the costs they've applied.
Wonderful job,
and
Mr.
partly because we're doing it in conjunction with a by-election in the same day.
No, that is no longer the case, Mr.
No
Chairman.
longer
But
the case.
no, I believe the Richmond one is still set for the 11th.
Okay.
But we've been able to pick up on a number of advantages by being roughly within the same period.
Okay, that's great.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman,
No.
I've probably misled you before on that.
No,
one.
that's fine. That's good. I asked for clarification. You fixed it perfect. I just want to bring it to the attention of councillors that there's a community forum, a regional forum being held in Cassowary Coast on Monday the 21st of June. It's going to be held in the Tully Grandstand. Belinda Down, who's a northern-based contact in the Premier's office, has convened this conference. She has handpicked stakeholders who will be present. There'll be 5 state pollies, including Curtis Pitt, the member for Mulgrave and Speaker of the House, Michael Healy, who's Deputy for Portfolio of Tourism. So pretty big hitters will be at this conference. And on the Sunday night, they'll be having dinner at the Queen's Hotel with stakeholders invited. Monday morning, they'll be accommodated overnight, so they'll be spending money in our economy. Monday morning, we go to the Barramundi farm at Horsby to do an inspection, which we've done recently ourselves, and then straight down to Tully for the chat in the grandstand to talk to the stakeholders across our wider community. My role on the day will be to sit on one panel, and that's about affordable community housing. So a very topical subject, given the demand that we're receiving at the moment. People are struggling to find rentals. People who are in rentals are getting kicked out because their homes are being sold from under them. Professionals like teachers, doctors, police officers are saying it's hard to stay here because we can't get suitable accommodation. So this is going to be a vital panel in terms of us going forward. The other feature of the conference will be the CEO will be giving an overview of Council's core business and our future direction, our policy direction. So I know he's doing his homework on that at the moment, but I think it's a good opportunity if any councillor has got a brief that they'd like us to hand directly to any one of the 5. For example, the Defence Force stuff, Councillor Baines, if you can get a brief together before next weekend, I'll personally hand that on to the Speaker of the House for you. And likewise, if councillors have got any tourism-related things that they'd like to put on the radar for the state government to look at future funding around, Michael Healy, the member for Cairns, is a great opportunity to hand that brief to him. Are there any further comments? Yeah, Councillor Millwood.
Yeah, through the chair. So, Mr. Mayor, that's on 1st of June at the grandstand. Is it open to everybody, and what time?
No, good question. The Premier's representative has handpicked the representatives, traditional owners, farmers, the wider spectrum of stakeholders. But in terms of council's representation, only the CEO and myself are invited. Not our call, state government's call, and this is all being fully funded by the state government. No ratepayer funding. Councillor Chewy.
Yeah, just you sort of, what is it actually called, the conference?
It's called a regional conference.
Oh, okay. So regional conference. So just lots of items will be on the agenda for discussion. For sure. Okay, I just wasn't sure about that. Thank you. Yeah,
the previous one was held up in Port Douglas. The representatives were accommodated in Port Douglas. The forum took place in Mossman, and it was all about helping that economy. And the reason they jumped the pecking order, we were actually first cab off the rank. They gave them first cab because of the effect of COVID on the tourism industry. They wanted to go up there and see how they can help Port Douglas and Cairns tourism sector. They've been hit a lot harder than us. We've done pretty good out of the domestic market. Sure, there haven't been a lot of internationals here, but talk to the players in the tourism sector, and they're saying the domestic market has been really kind to them. So our turn comes on the 21st of June. And the last item I've got is an interesting letter. The Australian Monarchist League is contacting all councils in Queensland to inquire how they plan to celebrate Her Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. When the anniversary of next year's accession falls on the 6th of February 2022, the Queen would have been on the throne for 70 years. It is 120 years since Federation. Queen Elizabeth II has been our head of state for nearly 60% of our existence as a unified nation, and the Platinum Jubilee of her reign is an event which all Australians should properly honour and celebrate. Now, they have got some suggestions here, and I'm conscious of budget, but some of the suggestions about how we could do this is to have morning teas on the day, or special motions read out at the February 2022 council meeting. So what I'm suggesting is I'm tabling this today so our staff can have some forward planning around it, and in the budget review later this year, maybe our staff could look at the events allocation and see if there's any surplus there where we could run a morning tea at Cardwell, Mission Beach, Tully and Innisfail. If there's insufficient funds, then we fall back to Plan B, and we'll have special motions written up by our staff to be read out at the February meeting. Is everybody comfortable with that? I'll hand that over to James so the CEO can put that into a future CIS for us, but it is contingent on having funds in the budget review later this year. Yeah, Mr. CEO.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, in respect, if you don't mind my going back to the previous item you raised,
Yep.
If any of the councillors would like me to insert something into the address that I'm required to provide, then please contact me. I'm only too happy to take up those ideas into the address that will be provided on the day.
Yeah, thanks for that kind offer. It's a good idea, yep. Okay, any further general business? If not, I'll declare the meeting closed at 10 a.m. Thank you.